Hello and welcome to the Quarantined Wargamer. I'm Big Lee and today I want to talk about buying on eBay. So over the years I've sold a few items on eBay, not a hell of a lot, but I have sold a few items. But by far the most I've used it is for buying stuff, as probably will many of you out there. Some of you may never have bought from eBay, and so I thought I'd put together a summary of my best tips for using eBay sensibly and trying to bag yourself a bargain. So let's start off with the first one. I think you should always try and research the price of an item before you cough up your hard-earned cash. And by that I mean the original retail price of an item. Have a good idea, particularly if it's a current item that you may be able to buy in a shop. You need to know what its retail price is, so you can determine whether the price you're getting on eBay is a bargain or not. I mean, one thing that I would say is that never ever assume that eBay is the cheapest option. Sometimes it isn't. So find out what the retail price of that item is. Now, if it's a historical item, i.e. something that is now out of stock or not made anymore, you still need to know what the item was originally sold for, but you've got to bear in mind that it might have I don't know, a heritage value attached to it. People may buy something out of nostalgia and therefore it commands a higher price than it was originally sold for. Equally, it may have gone down in price. So that leads to my second point, which is have a look and see what people have actually paid for that sort of item before. So you can look at older listings on eBay, and you can do a bit of research elsewhere online to find out what price people are paying for things. So for instance, if you're after a particular rule set that went out of print years ago, or a particular set of models, or whatever it might be, try and do a little bit of research to find out what is a reasonable price. What have other people paid for this item? Try and gauge what its current value is, which may be different, as I said, from the original retail price. So that gives you a benchmark which you can then use when you're looking for listings on eBay as to what's a good price and what isn't, and what you're prepared to pay. And then there are two types of sellers basically on eBay. You've got traders and you have private sellers. Now, traders tend to be selling stuff at a fixed price. They're a shop basically, so they'll have things listed at a set price and you'll have buy it now prices next to everyone, and there's very little wiggle room for negotiation, because at the end of the day they're a shop. They're selling just like you wouldn't expect to walk into a high street shop and start haggling. But for private sellers it's a different matter. They may list something as a buy it now price, but it doesn't mean to say that you can't put in a counter offer. Now, I would say you've got to be reasonable. At the end of the day, you've got to be fair to everyone involved. But if you think something is listed a little bit too high, or you think that maybe there's room for you to negotiate down a little bit, private message the seller and give them a counter offer. They can but say no. But you never know. They may want to. They may have already accepted in their head that they're going to accept, I don't know, 10 or 20% less than what they're listing it for. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So be prepared to put in some counter offers, which sort of leads into my next point about haggling in general, particularly with private sellers as opposed to traders. If you're buying multiple items and you're building up a selection of stuff that you're going to buy from one seller, send them a message, see if they'll be prepared to negotiate a bit on the overall price, or perhaps reduce the postage costs for combining items together. So use the messaging feature so that you can haggle with sellers. Again, you don't get if you don't ask. Now, I'm going to come to the eBay app in a second, but I do say it's worth, whether you're doing using eBay on your phone or on a tablet or on your laptop or your desktop, whatever, sign up for alerts. You can put in search terms and actually turn them into alerts, which can send an alert either to your email or your phone, that lets you know when items become listed. If an item is listed that meets your search terms, you'll get a message about it. You can turn the alerts off and just check in onto the app or onto the eBay site and have a look at your alerts to see if any listings have come up. But if you want to know when an item gets listed, you can set the alerts to turn on. Now, obviously, the more specific your search terms, the less alerts you're going to get. That may be a good thing. It really depends on what you want and how specific you can be. I mean, if you're just going to put in 15mm miniatures, for instance, expect a lot of alerts. But if you're going to put in, I don't know, a particular set of rules that came out 30 years ago or something like that, expect to get far fewer listings. I was recently trying to buy some old original D&D books. So I put a listing in. I was very specific about what ones I wanted, and I've had a couple of listings come up, but they're very expensive, they're overseas. But I've got the search term on, I've got the alert terms on, and I'll just see what comes up. Eventually somebody will list it cheaper. And I've got a friend of mine who's picked up some original D&D books for an absolute cheap price. Either the sellers made a mistake in their listing, or they've just been prepared to get rid of it, or maybe they just didn't know the real value of the item. But the point is with alerts on, you get told when these things come up, and you can decide what's a good price and what's a bad price. So that's a good one to think about. And I would always as well say it's worth keeping an eye on the shipping cost. It's an important factor to bear in mind when you've decided what good price you want for an item, and you've decided what your upper limit is that you're prepared to pay. You need to also factor in what's the shipping cost of that item. Sometimes people will charge quite a lot of money on the shipping side of things, and they're making a little extra cash basically out of that, because the shipping probably doesn't come to that. And it really depends on obviously where you're buying. Overseas sellers are obviously going to have a higher shipping cost, but the other thing to do is keep an eye on local sellers who may be prepared to waive the shipping cost, because you can go and collect it. Obviously in this day and age of varying and differing and changing social distancing rules, you need to just be aware of what you're allowed to do. You know, if you're going to collect something, do it in a responsible way. But you may be able to collect an item rather than pay the postage costs, for instance. And all of this sort of feeds into a general principle that when you're using eBay, you should always try to use a budget. You know, as I said earlier, find out what the price of an item is, find out what people have paid, so you've got an idea in your head of what's a good price and what isn't, and decide for yourself what you personally are prepared to pay. You may be prepared to pay over the odds because you really want that particular item, or that particular book, or that particular model, whatever it is. It's what is that item worth to you, not just what other people have been prepared to pay. And once you've decided that, then you have an upper limit for what you're prepared to pay. Now, you know, some of you out there may be money bags and may be able to afford anything, but I suspect most people want their money to go as far as possible. So having a budget in your head will stop you from accidentally getting carried away and spending too much, particularly when you're doing bidding. Now, it's worth using the auto bidding feature in eBay. You can put your maximum bid in, and the system will automatically bid on your behalf. So when the bidding's low, auto bidding will automatically outbid them for you up to your maximum, and then it won't go any further. So if you've already decided in your head you've got maximum amount you want to pay, put that in there. That way you're not going to be worse off. You're not going to get carried away and end up spending too much money. And you never know, you might get it cheaper. There's always the possibility that the bidding won't take off and you might get something for a song. So use the auto bidding feature when you're trying to buy something. And remember, most of those bids will take place in the last few minutes, even seconds before the bidding closes. So if you want to you can enjoy the excitement of the auction coming to a close and seeing what happens in the last few seconds. But using the auto bidding means you're not going to get carried away and go, oh, and then bung some extra money in there, and then afterwards have a moment of regret. So set yourself a budget and stick to it. So this leads on to the important one about payment. Now, generally there's two ways you can pay on PayPal. The two most common, you can use PayPal, or sometimes you can pay by a credit or debit card. So there are options that are on there. Now what I would say is you're probably much better off using PayPal. At the end of the day, they have a money back guarantee, which basically means that if an item is faulty, counterfeit, or just plain non-existent, you're much more likely to get your money back. Than you, particularly if you're buying from a private seller. I would say never ever get into a situation where you're paying for something by cheque or bank transfer, because basically you have much fewer rights at the end of the day. It's buyer beware when you do that. If you use PayPal, you are protected. Now, in the UK, there's also something called the Consumer Credit Act 1974, and Section 75 of that says that if you buy something on a credit card and it's worth more than £100, if you pay more than £100 for an item, that provides you with some protections. Again, the usual sort of things: if something is not the service that you thought you were buying, or it doesn't turn up, or it's faulty, you have some protections. But to be honest, if you put your credit card information into PayPal, the PayPal money back guarantee is actually probably better. So just use PayPal if you can. So that's it really. They're my main tips, I would say, to bear in mind. There's probably more. I would say it's worth taking time, have a look online, see what other information you can find, see what other people have suggested as good tips, but I think they're the main ones. And then after that, just enjoy what you can find, because all sorts of things get listed on eBay. Particularly, I find it's very good for buying heritage items. I call them heritage items. So items, old rule books or miniatures that have long since been stopped production, and you wouldn't be able to get them from anywhere else. They're not on the shelves anywhere, they're not being sold by traders anywhere. So maybe somebody's got through their lead mountain and found a load of old figures, and they have been out of production for 30 odd years. I bought up plenty of models like that made in the 70s and early 80s, and some of them are wonderful figures, and some of them I remember from when I was first involved in gaming, and I didn't get them at the time, and I managed to find them since on eBay. And as I mentioned earlier, you ain't going to get them for the small pence we paid back in the 70s, but you set yourself a value that you think you're prepared to pay, and you never know what you might find. And particularly when you're using the watch list and the alerts feature, you're looking for something specific, a Raoul Parfum wizard from 1974 or something, put that search term in, you never know what might come up. So that's it. So I hope you found that information useful, and I hope you've enjoyed the video, and as always, I'd say, if you feel so inclined, please subscribe to my channel, and if you've got any other comments, suggestions, good hints and tips, please leave them in the comments below or over on my blog, Big Lee's Miniature Adventures. So that just leaves me to say, as usual, I hope everyone's keeping well and you're all navigating the changes in social distancing and keeping safe and generally staying well. So that's it for now. That's it for this week. Look after yourself, and I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.